Hello and welcome back here at Time Warner Cable Field at Fox City Stadium in Grand Chute, Wisconsin. I'm Pat Coleman. This is Jim Dixon as we wrap up the 2013 Division III baseball season and the baseball championships. Yes, it's the 2013 Division III baseball championships wrap-up show now with added cameras. As we wrap up the season in which Linfield took over the #1 spot in the D3Baseball.com Top 25 midway through the season, and they rode it all the way through to the end, finishing off with Chris Hadelin throwing a complete game 8-hitter and defeating the University of Southern Maine 4-1 in the championship here on a Tuesday afternoon. But frankly, Jim, it's almost like the more interesting game was how Southern Maine got into that championship game in the first place. We talk about the earlier game on Tuesday, the one in which Southern Maine eliminated Ithaca 5-4 in 13 innings, and almost all anybody was talking about for the last 6 innings of that game and the first 4 innings of the championship game was the performance of Andrew Richards. He came out of the bullpen in the second inning through the final 12 innings of that game and then came in and started the second one as well.
Andrew Richards has done a tremendous job. He has a rubber arm, and his coach knew they wanted to get him out there. The Southern Maine head coach wanted to sit there and get him into that first game because he knew he was going to need some innings from him, but he couldn't let him sit. So, he got those 12 innings in, and the plan was in the pitch another 3 or 4, and that's what he did.
Schuyler Skates had started the first game for Southern Maine. He went 1+ innings, faced 8 batters, 6 of them reached base, 2 of them scored, and he left the game with runners on base as well. A game in which, frankly, you almost forget about the fact that Skates pitched the game because, as we mentioned, Andrew Richards went the final 12 innings. He not only set Division III World Series records for appearances in those 2 games that he pitched today and also innings pitched. He went, as we mentioned, 15 1/3 innings today alone in picking up the win in the first game. And a win in which, Southern Maine, I don't even know where to start with this recap, frankly. Southern Maine scores a pair of runs in the top of the third to tie it up against Ithaca. John Prendergast pitched a great game. He threw 8 innings to start for the Bombers. Jimmy Wagner came on to throw 5 innings of relief. He's been their reliever out of the bullpen, but he was a starter early in the season, so certainly capable of stretching out and going more than a couple of innings. Each team scored a run in the 9th inning. Kind of thought we were going to get out of here, and then in the top half of the 13th, it's almost too surreal to describe, frankly. The top half of the 13th, we start with Forrest Chadwick hitting a double, and then Chris Bernard hits the ball out over the fence, over the wall in left field, rounds the bases, and misses home plate. And the alert first base coach for Ithaca comes down to the dugout, gets them to ask for an appeal. They ask for an appeal. Bernard is called out. Officially it's a triple, so 1 run scores, and they lead 5-4 going into the bottom half of the 13th inning. And Ithaca nearly made them pay for it. Christian Brown started with an infield single, a fielding error, got a runner on base as well. Then they loaded the bases up with 1 out before getting a pair of outs, as it was Corey Caswell striking out swinging and Max Addy hitting a soft fly ball to end the game. And frankly, to be honest with you, it really looked like for those last couple of minutes there that Ithaca was going to make Southern Maine pay for really a bookkeeping error.
It really did, and I'm going to have to say that Chris Bernard must be the most relieved man in the stadium because that run was extra important, and it could have made the difference in the game.
Yeah.
But they didn't need it. They were able to sit there and get through without it, and. You didn't talk about the throw to the plate, the easy tag. Yeah. You didn't talk about the diving into first base, the 3 intentional walks in the classroom. This game just was on your seat excitement, and I don't know. I think Linfield's head coach Scott Brocious had some hoping because he saw the games play, and he said yesterday, I would like to see this game last 20 innings. He didn't get 20, he got 13. But that may have made a difference in today's game.
13 was huge, certainly for Linfield, as they mentioned that Richard had to throw an extra 4 innings. All those other details that we've glossed over in the interest of time. Read Jim's game story. Look at the photos online. listen to the Ithaca News conference from the previous game, you'll get even more detail on just a crazy game that only set up the national championship, in which, as we mentioned, Andrew Richards came back out. And Ed Flaherty, the Southern Maine coach, talked about it after the game. He said he didn't know how many pitches or how many innings he'd be able to get out of Logan Carmen. If you remember, Logan Carmen is has been their number one starter throughout the course of the season, got injured, had a bone bruise during the regionals, and he tried to go in the second round game, the first winner's bracket game, against Linfield, and just got shelled. He only got 2 guys out. His velocity was way down. He was really struggling. But for Southern Maine to be able to win this game this afternoon, they were going to need something out of Logan Carmen, because especially after using Andrew Richards for 12 innings in the first game, they really needed Carmen to step up, and he was the freshest arm that they had. But you couldn't start Carmen and hope to get a couple of innings out of him and then have Richards sitting for, an hour or an hour and a half and then come back out and try to crank it up after having thrown 12 innings the previous game.
And the coach just switched the order, and it made a lot of sense. And he certainly got some good innings out of Richards. And certainly when you look at the line score for Logan Carmen, you're going to find out that he got some good innings out of Logan Carmen. It was nice to see the freshman come back, or their ace, sit there and do well.
Yeah, he, it's the only thing is, I guess, if you look at Andrew Richards, had pitched pretty good first 3 innings, and the things kind of fell apart in the 4th. And not entirely his fault, although 3 runs are charged to him. There were 2 errors in that inning. It was really kind of a comedy of errors. Sorry, I hate to use cliches, but there was that because the ball got thrown around a little bit, led to one of the extra runs. And certainly made it a situation in which Chris Hadeland, who had a little bit of trouble spotting his fastball early, settled down, and after the 4th inning, basically they were unable to touch him.
Yeah, I got a chance to talk with the pitching coach for Linfield, and they were talking about how the Chris Hadeland we saw in the 1st inning, that was the Chris Hadeland freshman year last year. The Chris Hadeland we saw in the latter stages of the game, that was the Chris Hadeland today. And I tell you, there is a big difference between last year's Chris Hadeland and this year's Chris Hadeland. And to think that he's only a sophomore and he's going to be coming back for 1-2 more years, I think the Northwest Conference really is going to be in trouble when it comes to playing Linfield.
The Chris Hadeland is of course, the consensus pitcher of the year. He is the most outstanding player of the 2013 championships. He's the most outstanding player on our all-tournament team as well. But Jim, of course, when we do our all-tournament team, like we do with all of our teams and all of our awards here at d3sports.com, we like to have a set of awardees, a team that can actually take the field and play. And with all-tournament teams here, we've got the official one put out by the tournament organizers: 2 shortstops, no catcher. Got a lot of pass balls, but I wanted to kind of focus on some of the places where your team differs from theirs, and Chris Hadeland is not one of those differences, and Andrew Richards is not one of those differences. But why don't we talk about catcher and maybe talk about second base?
Yeah, when you got to have a second baseman. I guess your shortstop can move over to second.
Yeah,
and
or you could play a shift.
But it's you really got to have, if you want a team, baseball is a team. You really got to have a catcher. You really got to have the outfielders. You really got to have the infielders. And so our approach is always to sit there and try to find players who perform the best, but at that position. And for those who've been going to d3baseball.com, your senior team of the week, we've been doing that on a year-end basis. Mm-hmm. This is just an extension of that.
It sure is. So we talk about guys like Corey Caswell, who aren't on the official all-tournament team. He's on ours. Tim Wilson. I actually, to be honest with you, I'm not sure why Tim Wilson isn't on their all-tournament team anyway, because he had a pretty fantastic week as well. He was involved in a lot.
He really did have a week. He played a little bit outfield. He played a little bit of second base. Mm-hmm. He was everywhere it was. And certainly the one thing you can tell that the game was over when you saw Tim Wilson in beast mode. But he didn't have that sparkling of a game today, but the other players around him certainly rallied. And so, as they say, baseball is a team game. Not everybody has to be going 2 for 3 every single game.
If I remember correctly, Wilson made a nice running catch out of the track in left field, though.
And with speed to burn, Wilson is just an excellent player. And you're going to be able to play him almost anywhere on the diamond.
So that's the 2013 Division III baseball season. It ends with Linfield defeating Southern Maine by the score of 4-1. We mentioned Hadelin got the complete game to get the win. He improved to 15-1 on the season. It was Andrew Richards taking the loss. He fell to 11-3. Time of the game, 2 hours and 2 minutes in front of a rain-drenched crowd of what was announced unofficially at 1,400, but a great game, capping up a great week, and certainly a great week in terms of attendance as well.
It really is nice. And, I talked with the Southern Maine coach, and I'm amazed at the job he did. He lost his number one pitcher at the beginning of the year. Bernard couldn't pitch, so he sat and DH'd. He lost his number one pitcher throughout the year to a bone bruise, and they still made it to the runner-up to national champions. They did an excellent job, and they got a lot of players coming back. So if you're going to be fearing Linfield, I wouldn't not necessarily want to schedule Southern Maine on my calendar.
That's the 2013 season. Thanks for joining us on these series of wrap-ups from Appleton, Wisconsin. I'd like to thank our engineer, Ryan Coleman of d3photography.com. And again, visit all the rest of the coverage that we've done throughout the week, throughout the weekend here on d3baseball.com.